Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr and welcome back to my channel. Today I have some stencil layering Halloween cards and matching envelopes to share with you, featuring brand new products from the Pretty Pink Posh August 2022 release. Lots of amazing new layering stencils, lots of amazing new dies, stamps, embellishments, all of the good stuff. I'm going to start by building 3 different backgrounds with the layering stencils from the release, starting with the layered pumpkins. I've got some 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch panels of Lawn Fawn Fog Gray cardstock. Fog Gray happens to be one of my favorites when I want to have something a little different than white. And I feel like Distress Oxide inks look fantastic on it. So that's what we're going to use today is Distress Oxide inks. I have some carved pumpkin here that I am inking up the first layer of the layered pumpkins with. I do have a set of blending brushes that I always use for my Distress Oxide inks, and they are the Waffle Flower blending brushes. Any brushes will do. I've just set those aside as my Distress Oxide brushes. I'm also going to take a little bit of the Crackling Campfire and I am going to shade that into the bottom portion of my pumpkins. I am using the Waffle Flower stenciling mat, which really does help kind of hold the cardstock in place, helps hold all of my ink pads in place and all of that good stuff. We're going to go ahead and take stencil number 2, and I'm sorry about the wonky color. I fixed it. I noticed it, thank goodness, before we got too far. We're going to take the next stencil in the set, which I'm going to use the jack-o'-lantern faces. Now I do want to say, if you do not want spooky pumpkins, if you do not need jack-o'-lanterns, definitely consider just leaving this stencil out. I'm going to take the black soot Distress Oxide ink and we're going to ink up the faces. And the great thing about Distress Oxide inks is they're going to layer really beautifully. So there are the faces of our jack-o'-lanterns. So cute, right? The third stencil, stems and leaves. And I really love that they're not all the same. So you might notice that the faces for the jack-o'-lanterns go on the bigger size pumpkins, and then the bigger pumpkins have a leaf. These smaller pumpkins do not. For this, I'm going to use Rustic Wilderness, and we're going to ink these up. I'm using a pretty heavy hand here. Something else to kind of keep in mind, or another idea, is you could for sure ink up your pumpkins in different colors with some creative inking. Maybe use smaller blending brushes, and you could have a multicolored pumpkin background. And there is our pumpkin or jack-o'-lantern background. So quick and easy. Absolutely amazing. Next, we are going to take another new stencil set. This is the Layered Ghosts. And I'm going to start with my base layer. Now this really comes in handy using the Fog Gray cardstock for the background with a white pigment ink, because the white's going to show up against the gray. And if you use an even darker gray, it's going to gray cardstock, it will show up even more. I'm using Unicorn White ink from Hero Arts, and I'm just using another ink blending brush that I have set aside specifically for when I'm using white ink. And I'm going to ink up the base layer of my ghosts. Then I'm going to take the Black Soot Distress Oxide ink with the face layer of the stencil, and I'm going to ink up all of the faces of the ghosts. I just absolutely love how quick and easy layering stencils are. The third layer, and again, this is an optional layer. You would not have to add this if you didn't want to, but there is a stars stencil in this set that's going to add a scattering of stars throughout. You could also use this stars stencil on its own. So lots of different ideas for that. I'm going to take the Villainous Potion Distress Oxide ink, and we're going to add some purple stars to our sky. I mean, we of course had to use an ink that's name is Villainous Potion. I've got Carved Pumpkin, I've got Rustic Wilderness. I tried to pick my fall and Halloween feeling colors. I love the little purple stars here. Isn't that pretty? So here's our first two, and then the last background is the layered candy corn. Now this is another one that really benefits from using a light gray cardstock background. And I am simply taking a little alcohol swab here and cleaning up a couple little spots on my mat. I like these because they come in little pre-packs. It's just like a little square you can buy from the drugstore. And you can get kind of some of that gunk and ink off of your mat. Now my mat is stained with the pink, but the other stuff on there comes right off. So for this, of course, we have the bottom of the candy corn, the middle of the candy corn, and the top of the candy corn for an all over candy corn background. I'm going to start with mustard seed, and we are going to go ahead and add the base layer. And I'm using a pretty heavy hand here, but when we get to the white tip of the candy corn, it's going to show up with the white pigment ink we use on this light gray cardstock, which I absolutely think is phenomenal. Then we're going to go back to carved pumpkin, and we're going to use the middle layer, and it lines up so easy you can see right through it. We want to just make sure it's lined up everywhere. You can tape it in place or use magnets if you're using a magnetic stenciling platform. I'm living on the edge, just holding it down, getting my fingers all inky today. And we are going to ink up that middle layer. And then we're going to take the third layer, which is the tip of the candy corn, and that's going to be the white portion. And we're going to go back to our unicorn white pigment ink and add the tip of our candy corn. And this one is a little harder. It's harder to see where you have kind of been, but I'm just going to work my way down. I'm using a pretty heavy hand again, but I promise when I pull this stencil up, it looks amazing. Oh, and I kind of shifted it, so let me line that back up real quick. You can trim these panels down. Ooh, look at that. Isn't the candy corn fun? You can trim them down. You can, basically you're creating your own pattern paper, which I think is so fun. Now I've got my plastic splatter box. I've got a little white gouache in here. I'm going to add a little water to it, and I have a small paintbrush, and I am going to tap or splatter white all over my backgrounds. Unfortunately, look at those two huge big blob splatters on my jack-o'-lantern. I'm going to be able to disguise that, but I was kind of bummed that that happened. With splatter, you never know. But this just adds a little extra distressing. And I'm going to tap this all over my backgrounds, set these aside to completely dry. While these are drying, I will be doing a lot of die cutting. So there's quite a few elements that I want to die cut for my cards, including the Pretty Pink Posh spider web and spider, the Pretty Pink Posh cauldron, and then I also want to die cut the boo for sentiments. I tried to remove this and I made it worse, so I decided to just let it completely air dry. Next, I'm going to take some of the candy treats, which I die cut all from white cardstock, as well as the cauldron, which I die cut from glossy black, and the spider from the spider web dies, and it was die cut from a dark gray cardstock. But from the white cardstock, we're going to color in the candy items with Copic markers. And I have listed those marker colors down in the description below. We're definitely going for a spooky Halloween theme. So lots of oranges, blacks, purple and yellow here for all of our candy. And two of my cards are going to feature the cauldron. And then the final card is going to feature the web with a spider. But I did incorporate the spider into one of the cauldron cards, just really showcasing, mixing, and matching the different elements. For my cards today, the backgrounds that we stenciled very much kind of take the place of what pattern paper would be. I am using my waffle flower stencil mat to color on, and I'm not worrying about getting the Copic markers on the stencil mat. Those little alcohol swabs I showed before actually will take any of the Copic marker right off of the mat, and that's what I use those for most of the time. I also use those if I'm using the Tim Holtz glass mat. You can just take one of those little individual alcohol wipes and wipe up any of the marks. One of the very best things about this set of waffle flower candy treats dies is that there is a backing piece and then the layering pieces, which makes it super easy if you want to piece it together and like die cut it from different cardstock and piece it together, or piece it together by coloring the different components with different colors of markers or watercolors or whatever the case may be, or even ink blending, and then piece it back together and place it on the card. I'm only really going to show the coloring for one of the cards, as most of the elements are going to be the same when I put together the second card design. I think I did the candy corn background first, the one I'm showing here, and I did change my mind. You might notice that the boo is die cut from glossy black cardstock. I ended up not using that on either of the cauldron cards. The cauldron can be made into a shaker if you want to. I did not make it into a shaker here today. I'm just going to use it more as a die cut element or a design scene building element. But because of that, I opted to use the cauldron as a great spot to house the sentiments for the cards. And you'll notice that it's going to be kind of a big empty space. I feel like the sentiments get lost into the stenciled background a little bit, and so they really pop on the cauldron, but black on black isn't going to show up. So I decided to die cut my greeting from white cardstock and ink blend it, which we will do here in a little bit. I did keep my colors to a minimum. That very much helped with the creation of my cards, just making it really easy. I didn't want to incorporate a whole lot of different colors or new colors. I wanted to keep it pretty much Halloween colors, I guess I want to say. But I love all these little layering pieces. I do not love that my glue kept getting clogged. Was doing a little fighting with it. Now it's time to start putting it together. I did leave the top of the cauldron open, meaning I am not going to put glue right underneath that upper lip of the cauldron. And then I'm going to start tucking elements in. I'm not going to worry about putting the inside of the cauldron in place yet. And before I glue anything down, I want to tuck the different components down inside, and then I will figure out where I want to go from there. I've got some little stars, I've got a gumdrop, some jelly beans, and here's where I really thought, you know what, the sentiment needs to go on the cauldron. Now that I like how it's looking, I'm going to go ahead and tuck in about 6 elements, I think is what I ended up putting into the cauldron, including some candy corn, which is fun since this is a candy corn background. And I die cut the candy treats twice from white cardstock. So I had 2 sets, and I used both of the candy corn on this card, and I don't believe I used one on the second one. You could very easily cut apart your dies from the candy treats. I actually just left mine together because it's a lot of little pieces, and die cut it from white cardstock. And just for me, I thought that worked a little bit better. And now it's time to fiddle and play with this. I thought it was probably good to show how things come together. They don't always come together super seamlessly. Sometimes it is a work in progress. And you can see that I decided we definitely need the other candy corn. The cauldron needs something else in it. So easy to layer together. And then we're just going to tuck that final little piece, put a little glue back behind it. We're going to pop out the middle cauldron piece, and I'm going to put glue on my card and then just layer that right inside. Oh, it's looking cute. To decorate like the jelly beans, I thought I was going to use like a white pen or something, and I didn't really love that. And I used to use this literally, I don't know, on 4 out of 5 days a week or something, let's say. And I haven't used it as much as I used to, but I still love it. It is the Nouveau Crystal Drops in White Blizzard. It's going to go on and it's going to be kind of milky, but when it dries completely clear with these iridescent sparkles in it. So it's like a no mess kind of glittery look. The stars got glitter, the gumdrop got a little bit of glitter, the jelly beans got some glitter. Just a little bit of that shimmery, glittery look. When this dries completely, it's going to look amazing. I'm going to then pop this onto a white top fold card base. I did start out with bigger backgrounds than what I end up using. I do that a lot. I generally like to start with a full-size card background, and then I might change my mind a little later. So I did trim it down to 4 by 5 1/4 so that it would have a nice white border all the way around. Next, I am going to adhere some Silver Star confetti from Pretty Pink Posh, kind of scattered throughout. And then there is a Halloween mix. There's several new confetti mixes from Pretty Pink Posh. One has little black bats in it, and I love it. It is my favorite. All of them are really cute, really good, have all kinds of like those the little clay pieces or whatever in them. But I am gonna add these little black bats to the background, and I think they're just the perfect finishing touch. So let me add a few more stars here and there. You know me and the little sparkly stars. I always love the little sparkly stars. And if anything is not holding down very well, like I noticed some stuff was popping up, I used my tweezers to help hold it in place. Here's those bats. Look at this mix. Isn't it fun? These little bats are cute. And I like the little pop of black. They add to a very busy background. Little trio there. It's looking so super cute. For my sentiment, as I mentioned, I'm using the Boo. I'm going to ink it up with carved pumpkin, and I think I said fossilized amber, but I think I'm using mustard seed. I apologize. I'm gonna do a little ombre, and we're gonna glue that to the center of the cauldron. The rest of our greeting is going to come from the Halloween envelope stamp set, also part of the August 2022 Pretty Pink Posh release. We're going to stamp Trick or Treat on white cardstock, die cut it with a Simon Says Stamp sentiment label die. We're gonna glue Boo to the center of the cauldron and then pop up Trick or Treat with some foam adhesive right above it. I love a little mix of a die cut sentiment greeting, scripty greeting with a little sentiment strip. So all 3 cards are going to feature Boo and a sentiment strip. Look at that, isn't that fun? Oh my goodness, you guys, I love it. Now this card, very similar. I will show you just a tiny bit of coloring, but like I said, it's not going to be as much coloring as the first card because a lot of it is very similar. But this piece comes in the Candy Treats dies, and I am going to color it. You might notice I kept the dark in the center and then mid-tone and then light out at the very end. We are going to cut this in half. It's going to give us 4 pieces. I think I only ended up using 3. I'm going to use this tucked into the cauldron on this card to kind of look like, you know, witch's brew. And we're going to tuck the candy in around it. The only differences are it's a different background. We did a little green inside of our cauldron with the little green, you know, whatever, poison. And then I'm going to incorporate the spider from the spider web for this card. And I die cut him from a dark gray cardstock. I'm going to put foam adhesive underneath his body to pop him up. And we're going to put a couple pieces of candy down near the base of the cauldron, just really showcasing how mixing and matching the different elements from the release or from past releases, if you've got some Halloween items from past releases, how it all fits together seamlessly. I do think it's really amazing how it all just works together so well. And here I'm putting together more candy. Guess I did color a couple of them on camera. I did not think that I colored all of them. And you can see how I very messy colored, and oh, that was a color change. I thought I was going to do yellow and then I decided no, so I went over it with the cool gray color. There we go. And that is going to be so cute. I love how that looks. And I'm going to simply continue to color and layer and add in the different candies and poison or whatever into the cauldron. Very similar to the first card. A couple of little pieces of candy down near the base of the cauldron. I'm going to ink up the boo just like I did for the first card with carved pumpkin and mustard seed. This time, instead of the trick or treat sentiment, I'm going to use Halloween wishes, also from that Halloween envelope stamp set. We're going to scatter the silver star confetti around the design, and I'm going to add a couple of the bats from that confetti mix. And then I will take the Nuvo Crystal Drops in White Blizzard and add that to different elements like the candy and the jelly bean and the gumdrop and things like that on the card. This background too will be trimmed down to 4 by 5 1/4, so it will be slightly smaller and end up with a nice white border all the way around. For my final background, this one is different than the previous two since they both have the cauldron and candy. This time very simplistic. So we did the layering stencils in the background. I die cut the spider web from vellum and adhered it in the upper left corner. I did put an acrylic block on top after I used some liquid adhesive to hold it nice and flat. I couldn't really figure out what adhesive I wanted to use, and I don't think it shows up on this light background. I was really worried I might mess up my whole background, but it ended up being perfect, so yay. This also has a spider on it. I am using the ONYX Pretty Pink Posh Black Pearls for the eyes. I've got my boo die cut from the glossy black cardstock, and I have a sentiment strip here also from the Halloween envelope stamp set that says Happy Haunting. We will add the silver star confetti and a little trio of bats because like I said, those bats, you guys, are like my favorite little embellishment. Although I really like this one, this little bag of embellishments you can see here. It's got like little Halloween candies and things in it. I think it's really cute. And then we will simply trim this down. This background also is trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4 and popped onto a white card base. Now, as always, I shouldn't say always, let's say 90% of the time, I like to create coordinating envelopes, and layering stencils are one of the easiest and one of my favorite ways to create coordinating envelopes that go with my card. So for this, we are going to go back to our stencils. I did give them a good wash, and we are going to create coordinating envelopes for all 3 cards. And that's going to be, so some ghosts, some jack-o'-lanterns, and some candy corn. I don't want all over coverage, so we're gonna have to be a little more creative. Keep this in mind if you want to do something similar with your cards. You don't have to go do an all over panel like I did here. You could be selective with how much you end up stenciling. So let me clean up my mat so I don't get any ink on the back of my envelopes, and let's start with our jack-o'-lantern. I am going to mask off anything that isn't that bottom row. So for the jack-o'-lantern envelope, we are only going to do that bottom row of pumpkins. And I'm going to ink that up with the carved pumpkin. Then we'll do black soot for the faces and the rustic wilderness for the stems. And you could just do 1 or 2 pumpkins if you wanted to. I just kind of thought that little row along the bottom was really cute. I laid out the stencil. I kind of looked at it to see what I thought. My whole goal with coordinating envelopes is just to make sure that I leave room for writing out the address, but still adding some nice customization or personalization, I guess, to the envelope so that it really matches and coordinates with the card. So how cute is that? Doesn't that, it just matches our card so perfect. I love it. All right, for our next envelope, I'm going to do candy corn. This one, we have to be a little more selective. I don't want the candy corn all over. I carefully, and I probably could have got some smaller blending brushes, which would have made this easier. But since these were out, this is what I used. I'm only going to kind of ink up that bottom left corner. And I'm making sure to just keep my yellow ink within a certain area. And then this would be cute on a card front too. Keep that in mind. If you feel like you can't control your blending brush, you could always mask off the parts of the stencil that you don't want to accidentally ink. I lucked out here because I did not do that, but I'm going to take my carved pumpkin now. Now, because this is a white envelope and our card base was that light gray, so it was really easy, we could use white pigment ink. White pigment ink is not going to show up on the white envelope. So what I ended up doing is I am going to take the tip of the candy corn, and we're going to take our blending brush that we use for the black or the gray, and I've not inked it up, and very, very lightly I'm touching it to the tip of the candy corn, so it's going to give all that like shadowed look. Look how cute that is. So if you are going to do this on a white background, how adorable would that be? I love it. It turned out so good. For our final card, our ghosts, I kind of did the same thing that I did for the jack-o'-lanterns. Again, I thought I'd only do maybe 1 or 2 ghosts, but I got to looking at it and I thought little ghosts along the border of the card are going to be really cute. But this is the same as with the tip of the candy corn. I used white pigment ink on the gray background for our card. Well, you can't do that here. Without re-inking my black brush, I just went ahead and inked up some little gray ghosts with the leftover ink, and then added the faces by inking the brush up again with black soot, which is what I used. I just hadn't inked it back up for the ghost itself. And then we will add some little purple stars because that adds a nice little punch of color. I did notice one of the faces didn't stencil well, so I'm going to line it back up and fix that before we move on. Aren't they cute? I just love them. I think they're going to be so fun. I cannot wait to send these out for Halloween. These products are absolutely adorable. Definitely drop me a note. Let me know what your favorites are from the release. I cannot wait to hear. And that is it, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today for these Halloween stencil layering cards featuring brand new products from the Pretty Pink Posh August 2022 release. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here is another video featuring Pretty Pink Posh products that you might be interested in. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my Patreon members. If you would like to become a member of Patreon, please click the link in the description below. I would love to see you over there as part of our growing community. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click the like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.